all the ground rules for tonight. Okay, let's bow our heads. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity tonight, and we thank you for each person that is here to be informed about the candidates that are running for the governor of our state. And we pray for each of these candidates as they speak to us tonight, and that they will be able to share with us from their heart and their goal and vision for our state. Father, we pray that you would bless this state and continue to intervene in all those decisions that are made for our state. Bless tonight, and may it be able to bring honor and glory to your name. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand with me and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Amy Wagner. I'm the president of the Harford County Republican Women. And on behalf of our club, we thank you for coming tonight and supporting in this effort to understand a little bit more of where our candidates stand on the issues. A little bit about our club and as far as our stance with political affiliations. We are a part of our National Federation for Republican Women and then our Maryland State Republican Women's Association. As a club, we are not permitted to endorse any candidate during the primaries, so we remain neutral in that stance. So after the primary, normally we support whoever has taken the Republican ticket. So for tonight, everything is fair ground. I did want to go over a few of the ground rules tonight, so everyone is clear on where we're at. First ground rule, there will be no bashing of one another. We want to show respect. We will be speaking to the candidate up here one at a time. We will be going in alphabetical order. So we will start with Dan Cox, then Robin Vicker, then Kelly Schultz, and then Joe Werner. We ask that the audience please be respectful of each candidate and listen very intently to what they have to speak to us about. No candidate was given any of the questions ahead of time or none of the topics in advance. So each candidate will be given 20 minutes. The first 5 minutes, they can share whatever they want about themselves, where they stand, etc. After that, each candidate will receive the same questions one at a time. While the candidate is up here, the others will be in the lobby area. The next 15 minutes, we will have the discussion with that particular candidate. We decided that this format worked better so that the candidate themselves is able to be a little more free with their answers and have the whole room to speak with. The timers are right in front of us. They will give a notice to each candidate when they have spoken 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and then stop. We will ask that candidate to then exit the room for the next one to come in. The questions that we're going to be asking tonight were a culmination of the ones that our own club came up with, and we also will be looking at the questions that were written in the back as well. So that's the ground rules. We look forward to a very informative night, and I'm ready to get started. So our first candidate to come up is Dan Cox.
Thank you all very much. It's an honor to be here tonight, and I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Republican women of Harford County. It's always an honor to be part of the delegation of the 42 Republicans in Annapolis and the senators to welcome you for the annual day that you all come down as Maryland women. And I tell you, that day in Annapolis tends to be one of the strongest showings of any conservative group. And it's great to be here in Harford County to try to encourage and lift us up that we are in a state that is hungry for the freedom that we know and believe in. Yep. I'm running to restore that freedom, to give us our Constitution back. And let me tell you how we're going to do it. First of all, we're going to end the mandates. There will not be any more they've been illegally ordered. We're going to end the mask mandates. Do you know that children to this day are still forced masked in Prince George's County public schools, 8 hours a day? In my county, suicidal ideation went up 34% in the last 2 years for children. Children committed suicide over these mandates. It's a disgrace. It's going to end on my watch.
Yes.
Secondly, we're going to end the CRT and the division, the Marxist indoctrination in our schools. Get back to teaching reading and writing and arithmetic and STEM technology and things that make us proud again and give opportunity and the ability to lift us all up and to say, you know what, if I want to have a business, I can do it. If I want to build my house, I can do it. If I want to have a job or advance a career, I can attain that goal. Once again, in Maryland, and children need to understand this, instead of having the reverse happening, where the division and the hate is being taught instead. Like in Baltimore City, we dumped $2 billion into the city schools, only to have a 1% return rate, with the largest number of administration officials making over $100,000. That's going to end on my watch. We're going to return the power of the people with school choice and with opportunities for all. We're going to back the blue. We're going to make sure our streets are safe again. We're going to end the catch and release program of illegal aliens to the shuttle over our city. And you know what? This is being done right now, and an extra $1 billion was put in for the welfare programs that include this catch and release. We can end up going to strip that out of the budget. We're going to end the paying for taxpayer-paid abortions. And this distinguishes me from my opponent who said she would be to the left of Governor Hogan, who just recently vetoed the abortion legislation. And she said in the Baltimore Sun she would not do that. I will do it. I will make sure that we once again return the taxpayer dollars to you. We're going to return your Trump tax cut that's sitting in the Treasury right now, $2.5 billion, back to you. We don't need to spend on these programs. We have $7 billion sitting in the Treasury right now. $2.5 billion was what President Trump gave the entire nation in the tax cuts in our Congress. And instead of giving it back to you like almost everybody else in the nation got, it's sitting in Annapolis. At the same time that inflation is creating a tax on us. I don't know about you, but I can hardly pay at the pump. I have a diesel truck. I thought I was going to make out well by doing diesel, you know, but it's not working out so well for me. Diesel's over $6 a gallon. We're at $5 a gallon gas. The inflation tax is horrific. I'm going to end the inflation tax, including on property taxes, which is a broad policy across all political party lines. This will end in my life. So I'm asking for your vote. I see my time is up. I'm looking forward to hopefully answering your questions to the best of my ability. And it is an honor. I thank God for this opportunity to speak up for my kids and for your kids and for our families. Thank you so much.
Okay, before you continue the next 15 minutes, just I might make one thing. So we did get some questions that were submitted, and they're the same as what we have, except for one, and I'm going to address that now at the beginning. The question was about the Biden with his woke deal, with who, to destroy our sovereignty, that kind of thing, that whole statement. We're not asking that for any candidate because we did put out a request to Andy Harris, and he does have his staff following up on that particular question. to make sure it's valid and what's really the story behind this. Because sometimes, as you know, the media doesn't report well. So, thank you. All right, so ready to start the team? Okay. As governor, and knowing that at this time we have a very leftist legislature, which we hope to change, and understanding you don't have some options to do executive orders like some other governors, we have a few questions that are very broad. Taxes. Cost of living is high in Maryland. We have property taxes, retirement, and inheritance taxes are all high, and people are leaving Maryland to go elsewhere where taxes are not so high. We have all these environmental programs that are in the budget, plus a huge additional education tax. And this year, Governor Hogan announced a budget surplus. What is your position in paying the taxes?
So I just want to say real quickly on the WHO question, that's a very serious issue. Everyone should be getting in touch with their congressman. I'm so proud of Andy Harris working on this issue to protect all of us. If you don't know what this is about, as the gentlelady said, it's something that needs to be addressed. And I stand opposed, and as governor, the WHO, the World Health Organization, will have no jurisdiction in Maryland. I assume the question is that since I don't have executive powers like other governors, well, that's because they didn't have them anyway. We all understand this, right? The overreach of the executive orders is egregious. The executive orders were intended to order the executive branch, as well as other agencies in the government. That's the intent. But there's a lot that can be done through executive orders to return the money to you right now. The taxation is outrageous, and the inflation is giving you an extra inflation tax, such that the senior tax credit, which I did vote for, which gives us $500 to $1,700 back. Everyone who's retired can get this credit if you're within the income bracket. The problem is it doesn't even keep up with inflation. If you get a $500 tax benefit, the inflation rate right now is pushing 9%. So you're going to burn through that before you ever get a benefit. It might even go negative in your senior retirement payment. Now, we can change that immediately by starting to push down on these property assessment values. And I'm going to do like Ronald Reagan pushed when he was president, to tie in the constant dollar rate so that we have a true assessment value of the property taxation rate. For instance, I don't know about you, but I got a bill for 34% higher than last year. Because of inflation. This is an outrage. We can have our home values be what the free market has them be without allowing a tax assessor, which is under the governor's administration, under the Department of Taxation and Assessments, going throughout the state, raising property taxes in my view, in an improper and dishonest fashion. Not that they're dishonest, but the market is being dishonest by saying that the inflation is real dollars. It's not. It's an inflated value, and so we have to have a valuation system that reduces that inflation immediately, which will cause our taxpayer dollars to come right back to us. The property taxes will be stated. Let me tell you this, Prince George's County, I did a Democrat debate, and by the way, I show up at debates, my opponent does not. She's not shown up to one Republican debate, and she's not shown up to one Democrat debate. I've shown up to all of them, including 3 Democrat debates. You want a Republican who's going to fight for you with the Democrat debates. You want a Republican who'll say, like I did to Prince George's County, Democrats that asked me, how are you going to help me keep my house? I paid it off and now I can't pay the tax. I said, because I'm going to issue an order with the Department of Taxation and Assessments. Yes, it's an independent agency, but if they don't listen, if we don't get this done, their budget's going to be cut. $62 billion budget. We can make this happen and provide property tax relief. And also the other taxes that you mentioned have to immediately be reduced as well, and we're going to push hard for that. And when you show up to fight, the legislature gets very embarrassed if they don't go along. And that's how the governor got the senior tax relief this year, was he showed up to fight. Now sadly, the end of the result was the Democrats passed this really weak type of relief, but we did get something because we fought. So I'm going to do that even more.
Crime, drugs, overdose, and mental health are big issues with some problems, and Governor Hogan has allowed the undocumented immigrants to come here, and they bring those issues with them as well. What is your position in your plan on how to combat this?
So I worked hard to get our governor elected because some of the issues that we knew were happening, we thought would be stemmed. The tide would be stopped. They did not. In fact, the Biden administration was welcomed in by my opponent and her boss, undermining the America First values, undermining the President of the United States, 45, who I'm so honored and privileged to be endorsed by.
Yeah.
I was sitting in his office in Mar-a-Lago. His wonderful secretary told me, "You have 20 minutes." I said, "Yes, ma'am." I'm just so excited. Here I went in, and the president talked to me for an hour and 15 minutes. He said, "Here, as we're leaving, grab that hat off my shelf. I'm going to sign it for you." And he said this. He said, "Dan, we've got to win this because the country is at stake." He really is concerned for the country. And he sees Maryland as ground zero for the Democrat machine. Tom Perez, DNC, right here, right now, using your money to propagate their intense insanity across the United States. If we don't fight them on their turf here, we will begin to lose bit by bit Texas, Florida, all of these great red states, because they're coming for us. So we're going to come back for them. That's why I'm running. I can debate them. I was on stage with John King, Obama's secretary, when he tried to smear me as a dog whistler, and I just body slammed him, and the frost pursuers came up and took my sides. And said, "Hey, we like this." So you need somebody that'll show up and debate, and I believe that when you have, freedom in the balance, when we have the opportunity to speak freedom, it resonates, and it's a winning strategy. And I don't know that I answered the question, but, oh yes, so about illegal aliens, about the undocumented aliens, let me tell you something, it's serious. I voted to get him in there to stop this, and you know what he's doing? He's releasing it right now in your jurisdiction and making you pay for it. This is the Biden administration, and my opponent said, just recently, we're running radio ads to tell people this. She said, "I can't do anything about it. It's not a state issue. It's a Biden administration issue." Wrong. That is wrong. Our state has an agreement with the Biden administration to pay for them in your community, in sanctuary towns. I'm going to end that. And if any city in Maryland tries to use your taxpayer dollars to provide sanctuary to unvetted, undocumented, illegal entry foreign nationals, we are going to cut the funding. And if President Biden loves them so much, he can open his gates in Wilmington. We'll bust them out. They're taking your jobs. They're killing your daughters and sons. Right now, there was a young lady murdered and dumped. Her body was dumped in my district. This is a problem for me as much as it is for you. And we have the great 287G program, which I see your sheriff here. It's good to see you, Sheriff. We have the best sheriff in the state, along with your sheriff, I'm sure. My sheriff does 287G, and we get it done. ICE works in our county. We've caught 1,500 terrorists, people that are cartel members, MS-13. They're not in our county, but they're down in Montgomery County. Well, we're going to make that statewide, and I'm going to work with the sheriffs and make sure that ICE has the opportunity to take the very dangerous criminals off our streets and protect us.
Abortion. The Maryland legislature passed a 28-day abortion bill and went to fund training nurses, midwives, non-doctors to perform abortions. Hogan originally vetoed and they overturned it. There is talk of making it a right in the Maryland Constitution. What is your position in your plan?
We killed that bill through my committee and also the HGO committee. It did get through the Senate, and then the Senate helped us kill it. And we stripped out a lot of the information, a lot of the funding. Unfortunately, it's like a good socialist communist. What they did is they put 3 bills in, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and they got what they wanted. So we killed the amendment to the Constitution. We killed the 28-day infanticide bill. Many of you might have heard about that one. But what they got through was the abortion funding for doctors, $3.5 million a year, to make sure that they're funding doctors here in Maryland. And you know what that's doing? Right now, they're funding abortions with your taxpayer dollars through the Medicaid program, and it's creating abortion tourism and sex trafficking to cover up sex crimes. That's being paid for on your watch with your taxpayer dollars in this administration. I have fought that along with my Republican colleagues for the last many years. I've been vocal about it. Actually, When I was first elected, I'm the only candidate that was elected on both sides of the bay. My wife is from the Eastern Shore. When I was elected as town council president in the Eastern Shore, I fought it with my my delegate at the time, and now is the senator for that part of the shore. And I said, why is it that there's no other state in the region that uses our taxpayer dollars in the budget to fund abortions? Because they're coming here from Philly, they're coming from Newark, they're coming from Jersey, they're coming from DC. DC doesn't even pay for abortions out of taxpayer. They're coming from West Virginia, you name it, Richmond, they bust them up. That's wrong, and we're using our money. This is absolutely wrong. And one thing that we can agree on, across all party lines, 80% agree that no matter what your position is on abortion, it should not be funded with our taxpayer dollars, because it's a conflict. I'm going to strip it out of the budget. This bill that passed was a disaster. I'm going to fight this bill. We're going to have an Office of Constitutional Law in the governor's office, and we're going to fight this legislation and seek to overturn it, and hopefully we'll have an attorney general like Mike Peruka, who's going to fight this same horrific legislation and return the power to the people and put the money back in your pockets. That's what we need to do. My opponent, like I just said that she would let it happen. This is one of the biggest differences morally between my good opponent and myself. And I respect her. We both come from the same county. But she has made a statement and a line in the sand, and I want you to understand this: policies matter. You cannot win a general election as a weak person on morality. You have to have a distinction from the Democrat that shows that you're going to do something that unifies the taxpayers. I will do that. All taxpayers want to strip the abortion money. It's a winning issue. We shouldn't be afraid of that as Republicans, and I'm going to make sure we push that forward.
Education. Understanding that at this time, the Maryland governor doesn't have the same authority as some other governors, what is your plan to keep the state and teachers union out of our classrooms, get back to basics and civics in schools? How involved would you be to stand up for the kids and parents' rights?
So I will appoint individuals who will strip out, and if necessary, actually we're going to first order it to be removed, CRT, and this gender identification and doctrine, this transgender documentation. You know they're doing this behind our backs. They're teaching children in pre-K and kindergarten behind our backs that you don't have to be a boy, you can be a girl if you want to, and by the way, don't tell your mommy and daddy I told you this. They just hired in Baltimore County an individual, a counselor for elementary school, Hillcrest I think it was, or Hill something, who is hired to do just that, to indoctrinate your children. That's going to end right now. You know how these regulations came through the COMAR? I've been fighting the COMAR for years on these equity lens issues. The COMAR is the Code of Maryland Regulations. It's how the State Board of Education passes its rules. It's not law, technically, they're regulations. However, they have the force of law in the schools. You know how they happen? Because of the appointees to the State Board of Education. They're the ones who vote on it. Every single member of the state board is appointed by Governor Hogan right now. Every single one. And this is what we're getting, this kind of crap shoved down our throats. I got smeared on the House floor because they tried to pass a bill to teach 12-year-olds about behind parents' backs in school issues regarding suicide and gender chemical castration change if they're interested. Without allowing the parents to even know the discussions were happening. Now, as a parent, I take great offense to that because parents have the right to know, number one. That's why I introduced the Maryland Parental Bill of Rights Act, HB 618. 50,000 parents in Maryland supported it in committee. 1 week later, I became one of the illustrious 3 members of the United States to be identified. Well, I've been identified a couple of times by the governor. But he added one more person. He added on his hate list, DeSantis. He hates on Trump in the national media, he hates on me, and he hates on DeSantis. And he called, this is wrong. And he was so out of line. He was so out of line. And yet my opponent was silent for parents. And then she runs a TV ad saying that she's for parents? Not on my watch. We're going to have a real policy change. We're going to empower the parents, make a change, make the right appointments to the State Board of Ed and the Super Board that they just passed. And if they don't like it, guess who holds the purse strings in Maryland? $62 billion purse string to the budget. That's the governor, and we can make a change with proper negotiation.
Police. How do you intend to support our police?
So this is a very important issue that I've been working on in my committee. We stopped the defund the police movement. I was very proud to stand with my fellow Republicans when we did that. Your sheriff showed up, my sheriff showed up, Sheriff Lewis from Wycomico showed up, and the FOP showed up, the Fraternal Order of Police. They were trying to do some egregious things. They still got some very bad things through. I'm going to do 3 things. I'm going to end the jab for jobs mandate that's getting rid of our officers. We have first responders ordered to take the vax and the boosters and are being kicked off their force right now because of this. It's an egregious stupidity. Secondly, we're going to make sure that I would like to see their pay double. I'd like to see our officers paid right. Oh my goodness. They're putting their lives on the line in Baltimore City. You know why they can't hire them? Who in their right mind with proper logic would go be a police officer in Baltimore City right now if you're getting paid $39,000 a year to get shot up? Not me. Maybe pay me $100 grand if I'm going to risk that, and I might try it. We have to make sure we pay them right. And then thirdly, I will back the blue and make sure that quasi-immunity stays. We have got to protect them, and so if they get sued for constitutional torts, we're going to have the Office of Constitutional Law make sure if the Attorney General won't back them up. I know the Attorney General's come after your county and your sheriff. We're going to stand in for them. We're going to fight as much as the constitutional law allows them to back the blue in the courts.
Businesses, what's your plan to keep or bring them into the state?
I didn't quite catch that. Businesses which are what now?
Businesses, what is your plan to keep or bring them into
Plan
the
to bring
state?
them or keep them. So it's very simple. First of all, I'm not going to do what my opponent did and create a non-essential list and lock down 50% of small businesses. I'm not doing that again. For the first time, and this is something that just I couldn't understand. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. We can go to Walmart or a liquor store, but my mom and pop, 82-year-old barber who was trying to keep his wife out of the nursing home during a pandemic, that you're going to shut him down? And if it weren't for the church and the family, that she would have been sent to the nursing home to die, possibly because of the way people were being put back in the nursing homes in our state. And then the monoclonals had a stop use and shell order 2 days after our governor used them. And my Iraqi war veteran died asking for them at the Frederick Hospital. This is going to end. We got to bring our businesses back by saying we're never again going to oppress you like that. And let's get the tax rate more competitive, right? It's 8.12%, I think, when you could go across the Potomac and save yourself, if you're a business, save yourself thousands, maybe millions of dollars. We're going to fight for our businesses and make sure that they're never again treated that way.
Thank you, Dan. And if you would like to have more information about him, you can go to his website, www.dancoxforgovernor.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Brenda, can you get Robin, please? While Robert is on his way out, I do want to point out one thing. Harford County Republican Women, we are part of the Maryland Federation and the National Federation of Republican Women. It is our policy that we do not endorse any candidates as a club before the primary. Just know that after the primary, whichever candidate wins, we all come together and go forward to the primary, to the general election.
Robin Vicker, thank you for being here tonight.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Republicans of all ages, I'm Robin Vicker, running for governor. I'm the only candidate that wants to cut your taxes. Just look at my signs. It says cut MD sales tax 2cents.com. That's cutting the sales tax by 1/3, and since you pay it every day, every Marylander pays it every day, it amounts to a $780 per year fiscal stimulus for each household. That's a considerable tax cut. No state has ever cut its sales tax before. Now, one of the candidates talks about, well, let's cut the inflationary gas tax increase. That amounts to $23 a year savings. Cutting the sales tax 2 cents saves you $780 a year per household, $1.75 billion every year. That's a substantial tax cut. And it also, cutting that sales tax will act as a lure to the big companies, all of which shun Maryland. The Maryland Department of Commerce has been asleep. The big companies are not coming here. What was the announcement earlier this week? Hyundai is building a $5.5 billion car battery plant for electric vehicles in Georgia, not in Maryland. $5.5 billion. Toyota is building a multi-billion-dollar car battery plant, not in Maryland, but in Liberty, North Carolina. The Maryland Department of Commerce is asleep. What's another forward-looking industry? Semiconductors. Do you realize that the U.S. built 7.7 million fewer cars last year because we didn't have semiconductors? So you would think that the Maryland Department of Commerce would try to bring semiconductor plants into Maryland. But Governor Ducey, my friend, who's governor of Arizona, outmaneuvered Maryland. What did he do? He was able to bring Taiwan Semiconductors in for a $12 billion plant into Arizona, and Intel for another $20 billion semiconductor plant into Arizona. And as a result, he was able to cut taxes in Arizona and also to increase pay for state employees. Boeing, what happened 2 weeks ago? Boeing transferred its national headquarters from Chicago, not to BWI, not to Maryland where the Department of Commerce was sleeping, but to Northern Virginia, as Amazon did also. Amazon transferred 25,000 jobs, averaging $155,000 each, not to Maryland, to Northern Virginia. The Maryland Department of Commerce has been asleep, and I'm going to form a jobs strike force so that when these big companies that also attract lots of little small companies, when they announce a multi-billion-dollar expansion, our job strike force is going to be in the air from BWI within 1 hour, and we're going to go out to these big companies and convince them to bring their high-paying jobs into Maryland. And then we'll be able to pay for lots of things. Plans to improve education, plans to improve our roads, etc. The big companies are not locating here. Apple just decided to build a $1 billion new campus, not in Maryland, but in North Carolina, with 3,000 jobs averaging $188,000 each. Google, you've heard of Google. Google is spending $9.5 billion on capital improvement plans in the United States in 2022, but not $1 here in Maryland, even though one of the two co-founders of Google, Sergey Brin, graduated from the University of Maryland, because our Maryland Department of Commerce has been asleep, and we're going to change that. We're going to bring in these jobs so that you will have a well-paying job option. Thank you.
As governor, and knowing that at this time we have a very leftist legislature, which we hope to change, and understanding you don't have some options to do executive orders like some other governors, we've got a few questions that are very broad. First one, taxes. Cost of living is high in Maryland. We have property taxes and retirement and inheritance taxes are all high, and people are leaving Maryland to go elsewhere where taxes are not so high. We have all these environmental programs that are in the budget, plus a huge educational tax. And this year, Governor Hogan announced a budget surplus. What is your position in paying for taxes?
Well, I think I went over that. I'm the only one that really has a plan to cut taxes. I want to cut the state sales tax, which is 1.75 billion is not hooking on there. $1.75 billion a year tax cut, not just for 1 year, but every year. You know, the legislators, and I just read a report by one of the Democratic legislators from Prince George's County. He's bragging. He said, we just passed the largest tax cut of any Maryland session in history of Maryland. But guess what? You know what they're not telling us? That tax cut is spread over 5 years. So if you want to know what they're cutting this year, divide it by 5. I'm not spreading it over 5 years. I'm saying my tax cut, or our tax cut of cutting the sales tax, will be each and every year $1.75 billion. I put a charter amendment on the ballot in Montgomery County, which is the most liberal county in the state. Every office holder is a Democrat, to require a unanimous vote to increase property taxes more than the rate of inflation. Every office holder opposed it. The Washington Post ran several editorials opposing it, and it passed. And we stopped property tax increases for more than a decade. And Peter Sepp, who is the president of the National Taxpayers Association, had me to his national conference and said, you have set a national record for taxpayer protection under such difficult odds. I got that passed in Montgomery County, and I'm not going to vote for any increase in the state property tax. You can be assured of that. We're going to bring in some companies and increase our tax base. We're going to bring in companies like Facebook. Ever hear of that? You realize they just signed the biggest lease in Austin, Texas history? Why didn't they come to Baltimore? We don't want them. Why didn't they? Because our Maryland Department of Commerce has been asleep. Intel decided to build not only a $20 billion plant in Arizona, but also in Ohio. Suppose we had such a $20 billion plant outside of Baltimore. What would happen? Maybe some of these folks that are playing around with guns and fentanyl, maybe they'd say, hey, I can make $60 an hour making semiconductors. Maybe I want to provide for my family and be able to afford my rent instead of being foolish. So we need to bring in the jobs. That's my favorite 4-letter word, and we're not going to raise taxes. Robin has placed I've placed 25 charter amendments on the ballot in Montgomery County, 18,000 signatures each. About 16 of the 25 have dealt with property taxes in an all-Democratic county, and we've been able to stop the increases there.
Thank you. Crime, drugs, overdose, and mental health are big issues with some problems, and Governor Hogan has allowed the undocumented immigrants to come here, and they bring those issues with them as well. What is your position and your plan on how to combat this?
Well, you know, what's happened really, essentially, is that Joe Biden has repealed the immigration laws. There are no immigration laws anymore. And just what's next? The marriage laws, the property laws, is that what's next? And they're trying to do away with Title 42, which would allow 18,000 illegal immigrants a day to come over the border. You know what that would amount to if you had 18,000 illegal immigrants a day? That's 6.5 million a year, and for each of Maryland's 8 congressional districts, that would be about 15,000 illegal immigrants for each of Maryland's 8 congressional districts every year. It would be a flood. They're trying to change the country without changing the law, without passing something that is agreeable to the Congress. And I believe that the head of the Immigration Services, who testifies and lies repeatedly to Congress, the first thing the Republican Congress should do in November, they take over in January, they're going to be voted in November, is to impeach him and get rid of that head of the National Immigration Service, who really isn't doing anything at all to stop illegal immigration. The drugs are coming in. Do you realize that the #1 cause of death of folks between 18 and 45 is fentanyl? You know, I've been in every court of the state, and I can tell you that fentanyl is deadly in Allegheny County. It's deadly in every county. People are going around and they're dealing with street corner druggists. They're buying pills, they have no idea what's in them, and there's a deadly poison called fentanyl. We need to stop the flow of fentanyl across our southern borders. And if you look at my handout, and you've gotten it all in the mail, you'll be getting another piece of mail from me next week. I've got a picture of my friend and myself, Greg Abbott. Do you realize that 3/4 of Maryland's southern border is Texas? That's 3/4 of the border with southern and central America is Texas. He has spent billions of dollars of state money to bring his Texas National Guard down and to construct a wall. He's doing what the president and what Congress should be doing. So I congratulate Greg Abbott. He's a very brilliant guy. He's a presidential contender. And I hope that he and DeSantis and Trump and whoever it is that's running and becomes our presidential candidate, I think they will close down the border, and we'll have the same immigration service, the same immigration laws that we had when we came into the country and when our parents came into the country.
Abortion. The Maryland legislature passed a 28-day abortion bill, and they want to fund training of nurses, midwives, not doctors, to perform abortions. Hogan had vetoed that originally, and they overturned it. There was talk of making it a right in the Maryland Constitution. What is your position and plan?
Well, you know, my wife was an orthopedic surgeon. She's a doctor, obviously. And I think that, you know, abortion is a serious situation. And it's a good thing to have a doctor there if you're going to be performing the only minor surgery is surgery on someone else. You need a doctor for any kind of procedure like that, but I'm opposed to abortion, and I will never vote to make it easier for Marylanders to get abortions in any way, and I certainly will not vote to fund abortions, which is what the state of Maryland is doing now. My wife was a nun. She was a medical mission sister. She went around the world and tried to help people by being a doctor. She was the only female in her medical school class. She was very pro-life. She was head of the church council of the largest Catholic church in Montgomery County, Our Lady of Mercy. She was pro-life, and many times I went to the March on Life in DC with her. So I'm pro-life, always was, always will be. I'm not going to vote to make it easier for abortion in any way.
Education. Understanding that at this time the Maryland governor doesn't have the same authority as some other governors, what is your plan to keep the state and teachers union out of our classrooms, get back to basics and civics in school? How involved would you be to stand up for the kids' and parents' rights?
Well, you know, my dad was a Rhodes Scholar. He worked for 40 years in the Congressional Research Service of the Library of Congress. He'd bring me home 6 books a week to read, and I would read them, and I think that's the path forward, really. If you're going to be a rising person in the state, you want to be someone who reads. I believe we need to have parents in charge of the classroom, not the State Board of Education that we have now, not the local Board of Education. I've got grandchildren ages 2, 7, and 8. Do you think I want someone from the public schools teaching them about becoming a different gender or about reacting in certain ways in sexual situations? Of course not. The parents need, and also if you look at my handout here, I've got a nice big picture that was taken by the governor of South Carolina of me and Governor Youngkin of Virginia. I've attended a couple of the meetings of the Republican Governors Association, one in Chicago, one in Phoenix, and I've talked at length with, I expect we'll have at least 30 Republican governors after this next election. I've talked at length with these governors, and I believe pretty much the same as Governor Youngkin does about getting parents involved in the schools, about having parental control, and about shunning the teachers' union. Look, the teachers' union has been opposed to every limit on property taxes that I have proposed, every single one, so I'm used to dealing with that. But you need a governor who can debate, who enjoys contest living. Because when you're governor with a majority of the legislators being Democrats, you're not in contest living every day. You're in contest living every hour. And you're going to have someone on your right trying to get your ear to persuade you. You're going to have someone on your left trying to get your ear to persuade you. You need someone who's used to debating, as I have been debating very bright prosecutors for 40-some years. You need someone who enjoys debating, who enjoys contest living. Now, one of my opponents is refusing to all debates, refusing joint forums, and I don't see how that person is going to be able to deal with the Democratic legislature, because believe me, they know how to put the pressure on. I'm from Montgomery County. Every elected official is a Democrat there. They know how to put the pressure on, and whoever doesn't debate in the campaign is going to wilt. They're going to wilt when they get down to Annapolis. But you're looking at someone who was king of the pits and hand-to-hand combat at the U.S. Military Academy, and you're looking at someone who they used to call butt kicker Vicker. So if you think those Democrats down there in Annapolis are going to be pushing me around, you've got another thing coming. My son wrestled throughout college. He then went into the octagon, and he beat a guy who won 50 straight matches. It was one of the best boxers they ever had. I said, Flynn, he's a great boxer. How does he box when he's on his back? Okay, Flynn was a really good wrestler. He took him down, and that was the end. The guy's win streak was was over. So, you know, for every action, there's a reaction. For every move they make, there's a move I can make. And I'm not going to be shoved around by those Democrats, but I'm going to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. I'm going to be nice and get along very well. And I guarantee you I'll be able to persuade the President of the State Senate and the Speaker of the House to pass that 2-cent cut in the state sales tax and give you a financial stimulus of $780 a year, because it won't be my mandate, it'll be the people's mandate.
The police, how do you intend to support our police?
Well, you know, I like the police. I dealt with police every day in court. I'm used to being around police. I get along well with police. I think police should treat people to the extent that they can, and I know sometimes it's very difficult, to treat people as they would treat their brothers and sisters. I think police ought to be earning good pay. It's a dangerous occupation, and many times a person is worried about whether their spouse is coming home that night. We have bad people out there with guns and knives who really have little regard for life. There are many miniature Putins out there, and police have to be on guard. They need to have their body cameras, they need to have their body armor, and they need to be supported by the governor. And believe me, I'm going to support the police in each and every case, and I'm used to dealing with police and getting along with police, and also I know all the tricks that some of our bad people use.
Businesses, what is your plan to keep or bring them into the state?
Well, I think I mentioned that. We're going to have our job strike force. We're going to go out to these companies that are avoiding Maryland. You know, you realize that Nucor Steel just made the largest private investment in West Virginia history. It's a huge steel plant. What do you think our two of our poorest counties are, Allegheny and Garrett County? They would have loved to have such a plant, but our State Department of Commerce was asleep. We should have had that big steel plant in Western Maryland. We talk about Samsung. They just built a $17 billion semiconductor plant in Central Texas. Global Foundries just decided to move their $15 billion headquarters to Malta, New York. Why is it that Maryland is the tail on the dog in bringing these companies in? Every one of these big companies has lots of small suppliers, restaurants, support people. It's important to bring them in, and the companies are not coming here. The companies are leaving Maryland. Discovery Channel left Maryland. We need companies coming in, and Robin is going to be very business friendly, and so will Maryland be.
Thank you, Robin. And if you would like to hear more information about him, you can go to his website to cutmdsalestax2cents.com.
Thank you, and I applaud Howard County. I applaud Harford County, which has the 4th highest number of registered Republicans, but voted the 3rd highest numbers of all Republican counties. So you folks vote out of proportion. You overvote, and that's great.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Okay. Linda's setting up something for us. Unfortunately, Kelly Schultz was not able to be here tonight due to another obligation. And so she did provide us with a video to discuss some of these topics. Also, her Lieutenant Governor, Jeff, is in on military people, so she wasn't able to come. So, just a minute, we'll have
Here we come, the Potomac River.
I am so sorry I can't be there with all of you tonight. But thank you so much for giving me the chance to address your group this evening. I'm Kelly Schultz. and I'm running to make Maryland safe, steady, and prosperous. I love Maryland, and I want to continue to build upon the success that our state has made over these last 8 years. We've come a long way, and we can't go back to the failed policies of the past. When I was growing up, I wanted to be the first person in my family to graduate from college, and I was on track to do that. But at almost 20 years old, I dropped out of school and I welcomed my first child. A few years later, I was blessed to have another son. For the next 15 years, I raised my 2 boys, waited tables, tended bar, and did anything I could to provide for my family. I know the challenges facing every Maryland parent. And I also know that if you and your family don't feel safe, then nothing else matters. When I am governor, I will support law enforcement and hold criminals accountable. We'll make sure that violent criminals remain behind bars and that our brave police officers receive the funding, training, and resources they need to do their jobs safely and effectively. We'll treat criminals like criminals and police like heroes. As a mom, I know our kids need steady, consistent structure and leadership, especially in our schools. That's why I've introduced the Parental Bill of Rights. It's about empowering parents, giving you a voice in your child's education, and ensuring that every child is given the best chance to succeed. We will continue to record fund our schools, but we need real accountability and transparency. Parents deserve to know that their kids are learning, and taxpayers have a right to know what their hard-earned tax dollars are being spent on. We need real school choice and more public charter schools to ensure that a child's zip code never determines the quality of the education that they receive. I will make sure that our schools will be accountable to parents and students, not to politicians. That's my commitment to you. And I'm also running so that you can prosper. I want you to go to sleep each night knowing you can pay your bills, your mortgage, and save for retirement and vacations and anything else. And your kids can have a future here in Maryland. This is why I will stand up against all tax hikes and fight for tax cuts every single day that I'm in office. Under Martin O'Malley, progressive politicians index the gas tax to inflation. So when inflation goes up, so does our gas tax. With inflation at a record high and costs out of control, hard-working families are struggling. This inflation tax is making life more unaffordable than it already is. I will repeal the inflation tax when I'm governor and deliver much-needed relief at the gas pump. We've made some great progress in cutting taxes, but there's more work to be done. Our seniors earn their pensions here. They shouldn't have to leave to escape taxes. That's why, as governor, I'll fight hard to eliminate taxes on the retirement income of all Marylanders. I will also ask what I can do to make sure that you prosper, that your kids can prosper, and that Maryland can be a prosperous home that we all love. And that's why I'm running for governor. The truth is, when I was 20 years old, pregnant, newly married, and waiting tables, I never dreamed I could run for governor. But my experience as a mother, small business owner, a delegate, cabinet secretary, and yes, even a waitress, has made me uniquely qualified to be your next governor. I hope you will join me to fight for Maryland's future and to make sure that Maryland is safe, steady, and prosperous.
She's getting Joe. And if you want to learn more about Kelly Schultz, you can go to her website, kellyschultzforgovernor.com.
Everyone, Joe Work.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for staying. It seems like the diehard people at least are here. So many have already gone. I'm Joseph Warner. I'm running for governor. I'm a regular citizen. I'm an attorney. I work in Washington, D.C. I work with family and criminal law, and I do a lot of special education law. And also I did work with big law firms when it came to government investigations and mergers and acquisitions. So I have really good working understanding of Washington, though, and government on that side. I grew up here in Harford County. I'm from Boston. I went to Bel Air High School, Harford Community College, then Towson University, then down to the University District of Columbia for law school. I'm kind of familiar, you know, I was a Democrat here. People may know me as a Democrat. And it seems like the Democratic Party has taken such a hard turn to the left. I can't endorse or work with the Democratic Party. Pro Second Amendment. I believe you should have the right to carry a weapon. I strongly support that. The state should issue permits for anyone to carry a weapon. If you're not a felon, you haven't got a criminal background, you need to protect yourself. God bless the police, but they can't be everywhere, especially now when we're not backing them. We're not standing behind the police. If you were a police officer, you know, you got to put your life on the line. You have to be afraid that the state's going to come along and stick it to you. So that's not right. You know, so I feel like I'm here as a concerned citizen that see things that have really taken a turn for the worse. And that's why I decided to run. Like I said, my family's here in Falston. I grew up in Harford County. We're moderate to conservative county. The Democratic Party used to have conservatives. What happened to that? We've taken such a turn to the left with this leftist ideology. Like, take your children. I want to teach my children math, science, reading, and if I want to teach them about transsexualism or whatever else, I will teach them. Don't take my third and second grader and then take them and indoctrinate them. That's wrong. And we're paying $19,000 per student. Yet we have Patterson High School, where students are reading at a kindergarten level. This isn't a failure. That's such an abject failure. It's crazy. How can you be in high school and be reading at a kindergarten, first and second grade level? What happened? And then we're going to say, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you 2 years of college education for free. If you get out of high school and you're working at an elementary school level, what is 2 more years of free education getting for you? You're going to go sit in a classroom and not do anything and learn God knows what, maybe, gender studies. And you're going to get out, what are you going to do? You have no skills, you have no education. I really like when we had electrical trades. Why not in the city teach people how to work? Teach them job skills. Teach them how to do plumbing, pipe fitting, how to be, a person that would say be a handyman. Why not put people in school as part of their education, rebuilding the city? We should change all the zoning laws. You can't believe, like I've been now in Baltimore County. We got 2 little businesses. My wife and I'm an attorney, and she has a nail salon. We have 2 of them. When you try to build something in Baltimore City, try to create a business in Baltimore County, you can't believe all the hoops they put you through, all the permits you've got to go through, and what they do for you or to you. That's not the way it should be. And a lot of it has nothing to do with safety. It's just, I don't know, saves like some union people, some electricians, but we should streamline the government. We should streamline and make it easier as far as when it comes to all these regulations. We should make it easier for people to come to the state and start a business. We should make it easier for retirees to stay in the state and not be pushed out. Retirees in Harford County is a great place. My father passed away. She gets no benefits, no breaks. I mean, you want to stay here, you should get a tax break on your property tax. She's living in a house by herself, and she's got 2 people's worth of bills, really, 1 income. That's wrong. You should keep people in the counties, keep people in the states. We're never going to attract, like Florida, they attract so many retirees. Why can't we? We can't even keep our retirees. So anyway, I really would appreciate you vote for me. I'm just a Marylander who really cares. I'm one of you. I'm not a career politician, and I'm not just looking for my other job. So, let's get back to that.
As governor, knowing at this time we have a very leftist legislature, which we hope to change, and understanding you don't have some option to do executive orders like some other governors, there's some very broad questions here. Taxes. Cost of living is high in Maryland. We have property taxes, retirement and inheritance taxes, all high, and people are leaving Maryland to go elsewhere, where taxes are not so high. We have all these environmental programs that are in the budget, plus a huge additional education tax. And this year, Governor Hogan announced a budget surplus. What is your position in plan for taxes?
Well, I guess like any average American, any Republican, his state is so overtaxed. Like I just mentioned before, you can't keep a retiree in the state, much less get one to come here. And as far as the educational budget, how can we be spending $19,000? We spend some of the most in the country. Yet Baltimore City has the third highest per capita rate that they spend on education. And then it's like carrying it, they're spending more money. What they got is a broken system. You got a broken educational system. And the thing is, well, just throw more money at it. More money is not going to help. It's like a refinery. If you got 100 barrels of oil going in, you're supposed to get 100 barrels of gasoline out. But you see that you're putting in 100 barrels of oil, and you're only getting 50 barrels of gasoline. You don't just say, well, you know what? We're just going to throw more oil in the system. You say, I'm going to fix the broken pipes. I'm going to fix what's wrong. We're not fixing what's wrong. And saying, well, Maryland, okay, I'm not against Hogan or whatever, but you really have to say, we're going to be Republican, we're standing up for what the Republicans believe, and we're going to fight. We're not going to get everything we want. We may get a few things, but that's it. But then the next generation will be better. Someone's got to stand up and say, no, we're going to fight this. We're not going to take it. And then we're going to work with the children. Because I say, let the money follow the child. You take and say, okay, we're going to do voucher schools. In 1994, in Washington, D.C., I wrote the first charter, the first draft of the charter school bill. I worked with Councilwoman Hilda Mason. And that's how they did fix their system. A lot better than what we had. But Obama came in and did away with that because of the unions. I got no problem with just the unions, it's just the teachers union, but also all the other unions, the people that clean the schools and the money they make. So I'd say, let the money follow the child. That would help straighten out that system. You get competition, then that gets a better school system. And you see, where is this money? I was set up, one, just in Baltimore City. D.C. had a thing what was called a financial control board. Where's all the money going in Baltimore City? How can you have teachers that make money but don't show up and teach? How do you have vice principals who are still making money? How do you have thousands of students who don't go to school, yet they're called ghost students because they're still on the rolls because we're getting paid? Yeah, we have huge taxes in the state. And why? Because we have waste and abuse and fraud. And we need to straighten that out. And what you have to do is, I was for a union at one point, but this is getting ridiculous, especially government unions. If you are in a private union and you're working and you don't produce, don't get rid of, you don't go to another product. There's no choice. You got one government, you're stuck with it. So if you have a union that doesn't work, and you have people who are inefficient, you have people who don't care, you're stuck. You can't go get another government. It's not that easy. What you need to do is have a control board, find out where all this money's going, and taxes. We need more police officers. Baltimore City's 600 short. And Baltimore County's 200 short. Why don't we say, hey, if you're going to be a police officer, we'll at least give you a break where you don't have to pay property tax. Might not be the biggest thing in the world, but that would be what helps that person decide to be a police officer. A lot of people are leaving. My neighbor, his son, dreamed of being a police officer. That's all his whole life was. He's now a deputy on the county force. And he's talking about how it's changed. He was heard on a 95 stop. And he's getting disillusioned. He's someone who, as a little child, wanted to help the state, wanted to help the people. He didn't become a police officer because it was anything where he could be a bully. He's a man who wanted to help since he was a child. Why not give him a tax break on his property taxes? say when you get a pension, you don't have to pay tax on your pension? Why not, when you're over 65, at a minimum, get a break on your property tax of 50%? Keep older people in their homes. And say, you know what, if we attract retirees from other states, and they come here, it's a beautiful state, we got the bay, you attract retirees, what do they bring? They bring a pension. If you don't tax it, they're still spending it. You're still spending it, and you're still getting taxes from sales tax. You're still creating jobs. They come with insurance. They come and they need health care. They bring jobs to the state. They don't bring crime. They don't bring violence. And as far as the inheritance tax, that is an oddball tax, because if you are a farmer or you have a small business, you could find out that they value your business at a few $1 million, and you might only be making $100,000 a year. And you try to pass your business that your father and your uncle and your great-grandfather worked for, and you'll find you can't. Because the value on your business is far beyond what your income can handle. So I would say, we have to redo all the taxes. And then it gets me, as I was at another debate and had some Democrats there, and they were talking about the gas tax. We had the gasoline tax holiday, 30 days, you have to pay gasoline tax, gas is almost $5 a gallon. And the woman said, well, we need fiscal responsibility, so that's why we didn't continue the gas tax break. Because we need fiscal responsibility. And then in the next breath, she went on to 3 or 4 new programs that she was going to raise taxes on you to fund. Well, how's that fiscally responsible? I think we got enough programs now. And as far as we have what, $7.5 billion surplus. $7 billion. Why aren't we giving that back to the people of the state? Why are we going to come up with new programs? That's what the Democratic Party, new programs. I would stand up and veto any budget that had new programs and say, no, we're cutting the budget. Because you know what? If you fight, other people will take and say, okay, maybe I can stand up. We have to start at the state level, start at the local level. We have to get more House of Delegates members. Because if we don't stand up and fight now, we're lost. And this state is moving so far left, we're going to be California or New York. And look at New York, again, just this weekend. A man was murdered on the subway going to a brunch, right? Shot in the chest. They have a suspect, they believe, who shot him. He was arrested 19 times. He was arrested carrying an illegal handgun. He was arrested for robbery. He was arrested for menacing. He was arrested for assault. Why is he still on the street? Right here in Harford County, remember when an individual was stopped and he had an illegal handgun in his car, and they just gave him extra probation? And within a few months, he went to the stone company and killed 3 people? When he went to Delaware and shot someone? Why wasn't he in prison? But they always want to come after you, the law-abiding citizen, and say you shouldn't have a weapon. You shouldn't have a handgun. If more people had handguns, more people had weapons, more decent law-abiding citizens and business owners, you would have less crime. Florida is considered, if someone's carjacking you as a threat against your life and you have the right to use deadly force, carjackings went down. I had a friend in Baltimore. He's a retired Baltimore City police officer. He said he works down as security and he was sitting in his car. He said 2 men walked past me and then went from the front to the back. He said he watched them and he's watching in his mirror, but he's a trained officer and he's retired. He said they turned around and came back. He said, when they come up on the car, he saw the one pull out a handgun. He opened the door, stepped out, pulled out his handgun, stuck it up to their face. They turned and ran. You didn't have a shooting. You won't hear about that. There's no crime there. You didn't have to shoot someone. They're not brave. They want to rob you and shoot you when you can't defend yourself. Right. There's where a gun stopped a crime that you'll never hear about. You have more guns stopping crimes than you hear about because they don't cover that. You'll hear about the awful tragedy and the Democratic Party will raise tens of millions of dollars telling you how we should get guns off the street. I would break down violent gangs, violent people, repeat offenders, get the drugs off the street, because I would go not so much just after heroin, which is bad, cocaine. I would say fentanyl is not a drug anymore. Fentanyl has killed 100,000 people last year. Fentanyl should be considered a deadly substance. Fentanyl should be sort of a crime or a weapon of mass destruction. I would say if you get caught with drugs and there's fentanyl involved, so many people are dying because they're trying a drug for the first time. you get life in prison. I'm not going to take and give you back out on the street. You're going to stop selling the fentanyl. If you got drugs and a gun, you're going to prison. If, like in Florida, you have a gun, you get 5 years. You pull that weapon during a crime, you get 10 years. You shoot someone, you get 15 years. And then I have friends that are police officers, and they say, you know how many assaults in Baltimore City go on every day in Baltimore City? You don't hear about how to beat the police, attack the police, punch the police. They don't get even charged with resisting arrest, much less assaulting an officer. If you try to kill an officer, you try, right? You shoot an officer or shoot at an officer, that should be attempted murder of a police officer, a first responder, you get life. If you actually wound the officer, you should get life without parole. If you kill an officer, you should get the death penalty. And I was never for that before. You should get the death penalty. We're telling them they have to defend us and protect us. We should stand behind them. We're doing crazy things today. Same way like I was talking about earlier in the schools. How do you take and turn around and say, I want to teach a little child who, Bill Maher was saying, when I was young I wanted to be a pirate. Thank God no one took my eye out. If you're in first, second, third grade, and you like to play with trucks and you're a little girl, so what? People, they have no sexuality at that age. So little children want to be all kinds of things. Because they say, I want to be a girl, you're going to give them gender therapy. There was a school system where the child wasn't even, they weren't even telling the parents that would give them gender therapy, gender change and hormones. You should know what's going on with your children. Your children should be safe. And that's where, again, it comes back to the whole idea of charter schools. If you get competition, then you get better results. And I love the state of Maryland. I've been here. I love the environment. And we should have a lot of environmental laws, sure. But when we're overstepping, my aunt is in Baltimore County. She's got a little piece of property that she's off the back river. And when it heavy rains, it gets wet. The state came in and said, that's a wetland. They put all kind of regulations on it. She got like a little 10-foot square of property to get some water on. You know, I mean, sometimes it's great to have regulations, but you can't have too many. We've got to bring business into the state. You know, talking about, we're going to have, you know, there's a new, I forgot, we went to West Virginia, a couple $1 billion. Amazon has some warehouses here, but they're not putting anything realistic here. That's, you know, Martin Marietta, Boeing, they're moving. Why aren't they coming here? Why would Boeing stay? Well, of course, why would I think Boeing should stay in Chicago? But why aren't we aggressively going out to say to Boeing, we're right next to Washington. We got Baltimore, we got DC, we've got the suburbs. We can bring Boeing here. Why aren't we sit there going out with our educated public? What we have in this state, we should be bringing in headquarters. Amazon should be bringing in its headquarters. They shouldn't have went to Virginia. They threw them out of New York. We should welcome them here. We should give people tax breaks. The income tax is high. We should make them lower that. Lower property tax. This way, you bring in people. Again, vouchers, because I'm worried about my children. And people worry about their children. When you talk about Boeing executives and say, well, come on here. Why aren't they say coming here? Because the educational system. They want to have vouchers. Why not let these people have a decent education? That's where your children get the better tomorrow. A better education. And Baltimore, we got to really get down on the crime. And that's where I would go say we have to change the way we're doing things. We can't keep moving to the left. So I hope that you understand that. Vote for me, help me out. I know I'm not part of the system. I'm not part of the old boys network. And I'm going to go in and make a difference. Because at my age and being a governor, I'm going to work for you. And when I'm done, I'm going back to my law firm. I'm not some politician looking for a career step. You see that with Hogan. Why isn't he running for Senate? Because he wants to be president. It's a career step. It's an aggrandizement of his ego. Same way with other people. And the masks, and what they did to children, and the shots. And you can see the current government. They pushed all that. They were for shots. They were for the masks. They were for closing down schools. They were for closing down your business. We have a business. What was not on the list when he did the vital interest of the vital list of what you need? They closed us up. People needed that. I mean, you can't believe how many people all to get their nails done didn't feel normal. So, you got someone who's running now, who's telling you, oh no, I'm against masks. Oh no, I'm for opening the schools. Oh no, I don't think you need to get a shot. Where was this person when the government was making you, when Hogan was forcing you to do these things? And you know what? The Democrats are even worse. Do you think Perez or any of them, I've talked to them all, I've been to the events. Francho used to be considered more of a moderate. He's even very liberal. But we've got people to the left of Francho. If we get any Democrat, it's going to be awful. So please, turn out and vote. Get everyone you know to vote. But don't let the state have everything Democratic. Because if we have a delegation that's Democratic, we're going to lose everything. So that's pretty much, help me out.
Thank you, Joe. And if you would like to hear more about Joe, it's www.werner, W-E-R-N-E-R, for Maryland.com.
Thank you.
And that concludes our candidate forum. I'm sure the candidates will be hanging out afterwards. If you have any further questions or anything you want to ask them, I'm sure they'll be glad to talk with you. We thank you so much for coming tonight and hope that you found this to be very informative and maybe learn some things about candidates that you didn't know before. So thank you so much, and thank you for supporting Harford County Republican Women events. Have a good evening, safe drive home. Good night.